It is still a very active scene out here in southeast Rochester. I spoke with police just a short time ago who confirmed to me one woman was killed in this crash. This robber was bold. Police say 2 days in a row he walked right into Sterling State Bank behind me, handed the teller a note and demanded money. The app is called Erasmus. All you have to do is take a picture.
And as long as it's linked to video, it'll come to life.
Laura, I'm standing here along 2nd Street Southwest. In fact, you can still see the orange markings on the road behind me as part of this accident reconstruction. You've probably been there. You get pulled over. Make sure you have the proper paperwork and be prepared to have a chat with a police officer. It is a great night to be out here. Of course, there is food, there's live music, but there's also a lot of unique arts and crafts. I was walking around and I came across these. Check these out. These are lawn ornaments made out of silverware. Burrock Elementary behind me here has been closed for the past 5 years. In fact, there's even this for sale sign posted out in front of the school. Say these pencils represent people. 2 decades ago, there were 30 students in the district's 2nd grade class. This year, just 10. Betsy, overall, Rochester Public Schools performed below the state average in all 3 categories, but did see some improvements, and the district superintendent is staying optimistic. For the past 5 hours, Dennis Hastert has been adjusting to his new life, one drastically different from his prominent position in Congress. Hastert, now an inmate here at the Federal Medical Center. We are following breaking news out of Red Wing tonight, where authorities have been searching for a missing woman. Within just the past 30 minutes, we've learned a vehicle with a similar description to the van Mariah Christensen was last seen driving has been pulled from the Mississippi River. We have just confirmed that Bernie Sanders is the winner in Minnesota on the Democratic side. And again, Marco Rubio took Minnesota on the Republican side. That is the only state that he has won so far. It was a big day up at the Minnesota Capitol. Governor Mark Dayton releasing his budget plan, a mix of spending, tax cutting, and saving. Jacob Walls is being treated at St. Mary's Hospital up in Duluth after that horrific accident Sunday. His injuries are extensive. But first, new information on a tense situation in Hayfield. Shots were fired, and tonight, a wanted sex offender is back in jail. Good evening, and thank you for choosing ABC6. I'm James Wilcox. Laura is off tonight. Just a couple of hours ago, the Dodge County Sheriff's Office released new information on what happened this afternoon in Hayfield. The man taken into custody was wanted by U.S. Marshals for not registering as a sex offender in South Dakota and had recently made threats that he would not go down without a fight. When he was spotted in Hayfield today, that's exactly what happened.
I saw the car try and pull forward out of the parking lot and hit the first unmarked vehicle.
Tuesday afternoon, a quiet street in Hayfield quickly turned into a chaotic scene. Lana Mindrup was at the bank when it started.
Cops they all jumped out of their vehicles. The guns were pulled at that point.
And within seconds, shots were fired.
Pop, 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 pop.
Witnesses say the car tried speeding off.
And they started firing on the car, and it backed up into an officer and spun around back into the street and then crashed into the Greens apartments right there.
Just sitting on the couch watching TV, and I glanced out the window and seen a car coming at me.
Richard Gwilt was inside that apartment.
And he got up and took off running because the car was still hanging outside the building.
I saw a bunch of officers escorting some guy into the cop car or whatever, and then I seen an officer get in the ambulance, the one that got hit.
The dramatic scene leaving people in this small town shaken up.
Hayfield's very quiet and low-key, so we don't make the news for these things.
Sheriff Rose says the suspect does have a criminal history involving assault, weapons possession, and threats to law enforcement. He's expected to be formally charged in Dodge County District Court Friday. His name has not been released. A deputy was injured in the incident this afternoon, taken to St. Mary's, treated and released. Nobody else was hurt. With the sun shining on a beautiful spring day, standing at this spot still brings Rita Seha to a very dark place.
911 emergency.
That was the deadliest drunk driving incident in Minnesota history.
6 years ago, a drunk driver slammed into Rita's van, killing her best friend and 4 of her own family members.
And I keep remembering back what we were doing on the day, like today, what we were doing, and this whole month's been pretty hard on me.
But as time has passed, Rita has moved forward and forgiven the man who caused the crash.
I kind of looked at Chris as kind of like a son of my own, you know. I wouldn't want anyone to hate my son.
The two now attend speaking engagements together, like this recent one at a high school in Winona.
Together, him and I will try to keep this word going to help prevent it from any happening to anybody else.
Which is something James Temple saw when we posted the story on our station Facebook page.
Hi, Rita.
Hi.
Probably don't recognize me. I'm James. I was a flight nurse that was on that night when you got in your accident. I transported your grandson.
Thank you.
I'm sorry it turned out the way it did.
The two now reunited. James telling Rita the accident has haunted him since the night it happened.
It was the moment that's going to stick with me forever. I'll never forget it.
And he never thought he'd be able to forgive.
Thank you for saving my life.
Until seeing how Rita has.
My friend and my side partner as a survivor.
If somebody like you, who was affected so much by that accident, could forgive, I have no excuse not to. And you've allowed me to release a lot of anger and a lot of pain. She turned him from a monster in my mind back into a human being.
Proof that compassion and the power of the human spirit can bring a bright spot, even in the darkest of days.
And I hope that this kind of now is the start of letting go of some of these emotions and memories. I'm sorry.
In Rochester, James Wilcox, ABC 6 News. People driving by this section of Interstate 90 near Elbert Lee.
The body was found up against the interstate fence just to the west of here.
May not even realize they're driving past a potential crime scene. This is video from back in April when that body was discovered. Investigators believe it was likely dumped there years ago.
But it had been there long enough to where some of the smaller bones and some of the larger bones had started to sink down into the soil.
But besides a pair of shoes and this ring found at the scene, investigators have little to work with.
The identity is the pinnacle of our goal, you know, through this initial part of the investigation. Without having an identity, we have nothing to go off of.
In St. Paul, 100 miles north of Elbert Lee, that's what forensic scientists at the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension hope to determine: who the person is.
We've had some pretty good success with bones of this age.
Catherine Knutson is the Director of Forensic Sciences at the BCA. In 2013, the agency started a renewed effort to help identify the nearly 70 sets of currently unidentified remains that have been found in Minnesota, including the ones from Freeborn County. Much of the work done to identify the human remains happens in this mitochondrial DNA lab. We can't go inside because of how sensitive that work is. In fact, only the forensic scientists are allowed in. Recording video through a glass window, we're able to see some of the work scientists are doing. Mitochondrial DNA testing is a specific type of DNA profiling which is most commonly used when working with remains that are old or degraded.
Mitochondrial DNA is maternally inherited, and so it's a different type of DNA. It has different powers. So when we're looking at families and we're trying to match unidentified individuals to family members, we can trace that maternal line with that type of DNA testing.
Which is what happened in the case of Michelle Boucher.
We're here today to announce that Michelle Boucher was 18 years old when she disappeared from her family's home in Texas.
Boucher's body was found off Interstate 90 near Blue Earth back in 1980. A state trooper admitted killing her, but nobody knew who she was. It remained that way until last year when her body was exhumed and BCA scientists were able to extract DNA and match it to DNA submitted by Boucher's family in Texas.
We can have the most success possible with getting DNA profiles from the unidentified of Minnesota, and it won't do anybody any good if we don't have the samples from the relatives to compare them to.
Family DNA submissions are how the BCA identified the other two bodies that have been identified so far. Perlene Walton, who vanished in 1993, and Cassandra Rines, who went missing in 1985. Women whose families now have some answers.
Although the answers that we are able to provide when we do come up with an identification of some of these unidentified remains, these unidentified individuals aren't necessarily the answers the families have been waiting for, but at least they have an idea of where their loved ones are now.
And asked him if he'd heard anything.
Back in Elbert Lee, Sheriff Freitag is also hoping forensic science will provide him with some answers and possibly help solve a case.
I want to be able to know if a crime occurred that resulted in this person's death, or if there's nothing suggesting that a crime took place, see if we can notify family and get some closure that way too.